Hi, and welcome to the Yearly Show. I'm your host, Jace Paul, and today we're going to be discussing the congressional debate that happened last week here in Logan, Utah, between Democrat Doug Owens and Republican Mia Love for the 4th Congressional District in Utah. We're going to be talking a little bit about some of the stances held by each of the candidates and get a feel for where they lie on the issues. First up on the agenda today, we're going to talk about the Affordable Care Act. During the debate, Doug and Mia both had pretty good ideas about what they want to do with the Affordable Care Act. They both talked a lot about the individual mandate that's hurt the Utah economy, as it requires employers to cut employees' hours so they don't have to provide health insurance for them. The difference between these two candidates is on how they want to change the system. Doug Owens has good, constructive ideas about how we can reform and fix Obamacare without causing the 13 million people that have become insured under it to have a lapse in coverage. Mia Love, on the other hand, just spouts the same old Republican lines about repeal without any viable alternative. Most Republicans, and Mia Love's included in this, think that the private sector can provide better health care than the government can if they just have the opportunity to run it. Let's see if that's true. Let's look at some numbers and see how that claim holds up.
I was going to do everything I can to repeal and replace it with something that is functional and get with broad healthcare reforms, free market healthcare reforms, and that's exactly what I'm going to do.
So these are other developed nations, including France, Australia, Germany, Canada, Sweden, so all the developed countries, and you can see that on average we spend about $8,500 per capita on healthcare. So you would think that for that amount of money, we'd probably get some pretty good outcomes, but it turns out...
Looking at that video, I think it's pretty clear that the private sector can't do a better job than the government. Not only does the U.S. lead the world in percentage of GDP that's spent on health expenditures, but we are ranked dead last in quality of care among developed countries. 21.3% of people report that they're not able to follow up with treatments with their doctor due to excessive costs, and another 27.7% can't go to the doctor in the first place due to how expensive it is. Health spending, as I said, in proportion of GDP, is 16.4% in 2013. That was 3 years ago. It's only gone up since then. If the private sector works so well in lowering costs, why is this happening today? There's only one place that I think this, non-plan of having the government keep their hands completely free of health care might work. And let's take a look at this place and see what it looks like.
Well, after Rush opened my eyes, I am seeing the world in a whole new way now. To quote a famous troublemaker, I have a dream. I dream of Republican Town, where men to the right of the aisle don't back down. The streets are aglow with the smell of apple pies, and babies come out of the womb in coats and ties. Nice place, huh, Rush?
It's a paradise, Brian.
Mia Love and her Tea Party friends might have policies that would work in Republican Town, as we've seen. But in the real world, all we see is higher prices, lower quality of care, and higher mortality rates for patients and people who need health care. Obamacare provides that, and that's why Doug Owens clearly has a stronger stance, because he doesn't think that it needs to be repealed. He doesn't think that it needs to be gone. He understands that it's necessary, that it's already here, and that we just need to fix it and reform it instead of just throwing it out the window with nothing as our backup. Since we're talking about people who need the help of the government, why don't we talk about immigration? During the debate, Mia Love mentioned that she had a 4-pronged plan to improve immigration. One of these points involved requiring people who enter the country to pay a fee before entering. Not only would this make it harder for people to enter the country, which is against what she said she's trying to do, but it would have made it so that Mia Love's parents, if this was a policy when they tried to immigrate, wouldn't have been able to get into the country. If you recall, during her opening statement, she said that her parents left Haiti and came to America with $10 in their pockets. Now, I'm no expert on government fees that the Americans charge for different services, but in a country where you have to have at least $25 to open an account in most banks, I don't think the $10 they had is going to be able to get them to pass into America. Now, I've had fun with both of the candidates on issues ranging from Obamacare to immigration, but now it's time we talk about a lot more serious subject, and that's the subject of gun violence in America. During the debate, Dr. Khan asked the candidates a question about school shootings, asking what they thought should be done to solve this problem in America. Doug Owens acknowledged that this was a very big problem, and he put forth several good ideas on how we can combat gun violence in America. Mia Love, on the other hand, didn't even acknowledge that these were crimes being committed intentionally. She said, and I quote, "School shootings are tragic and hurt my heart. Many of them, though, if we look into the details of them, are accidents. People who don't know how to use firearms or have been misplaced. School shootings are accidents. And I guess you could say that me brushing my teeth with super glue was an accident. Maybe I was just walking down the hallway. I saw a misplaced tube of super glue on the ground. So I picked it up, walked in the bathroom, accidentally put it on my toothbrush, and then started brushing my teeth with it. Now, when I told my mom that this had happened to me, with a mouthful of super glue toothbrush bristles, she didn't really think it was an accident. So I don't really know that my mom, who's one of the most smart people I know, would think that Mia Love's stance, that these are just accidents, would hold up at all. Not only does Mia Love, though, not only does she think that these shootings are not committed intentionally, but it appears that she would be willing to give guns and not take away the rights of people with debilitating mental illnesses that we don't understand. For example, Dr. Khan asked a question during the debate if a person struggling with paranoid schizophrenia who was recently released from a mental hospital should have the right to purchase a firearm. Doug Owens, he said that he felt the risk would be too high, and that upon showing that they've overcome their mental illness, that he'd be happy to reestablish that Second Amendment right. Mia Love, on the other hand, said, and I quote again, "I don't think we have the right place to say if his Second Amendment rights should be taken away." Not only does Mia Love not think that these crimes are committed intentionally, but she's more than willing to supply these people with the tools to commit them. I think that's a very serious flaw in a candidate, especially on an issue that's so divisive in our country. The refusal of her to even acknowledge this as a problem is a prime example of why she's just a tool of the right-wing extremists in the Republican Party that we see today, and is not representative at all of what we want in Utah. Does anybody here remember a few years ago when a creepy-looking guy in the Senate named Ted Cruz led a government shutdown to protest the Affordable Care Act? I do, and so does Mia Love. The only difference between myself and Mia Love is that I don't support sustaining $24 billion in economic losses or having 800,000 people put out of work with no guarantee of pay. Neither do 81% of Americans, but hiding somewhere in that other 19% of Americans that approve of these horrible things is Mia Love. Not only is she radical enough to support the shutdown, but she said that during the debate that she would be willing to do it again if another issue that she and her extremist pals in the Republican Party thought would make a good fight. Mia Love doesn't understand that when the government fails to compromise on items as important as funding itself, America's credibility, both abroad and at home, is damaged. People abroad see America as a force for order in the world. But how can we help keep order abroad when we can't even come together to decide how we spend our money? Doug Owens opposes government shutdowns, something that I think is very, very important in somebody that we want representing us, as I don't think a majority of Utahns thought that shutting down the government was a good idea. It hurt our economy especially bad with the national parks being closed down, as that's a major source of revenue for us. Maybe Mia Love should take a page from the playbook of Doug Owens, instead of reading from her buddy Rush Limbaugh and all his friends' book on how to be good American Republicans. There's one last issue that I want to talk about before we close our segment, and that's where are these two candidates getting the money for their campaigns? Mia Love's top 5 donors, out of all of them, only one of them is from Utah. Doug Owens' top 5 campaign contributors are all from Utah, and the number 1 contributor to his campaign is the University of Utah. Let's just think about that for a second. Doug Owens is entirely funded by Utah people. Mia Love is maybe like 20% funded by people from Utah that share interests with Utahns. The rest of hers range from the American Bankers Association to For Life Research, an anti-abortion group, and to Prosperity Action, which is directly linked to Koch brothers. They're funded by them. And in 2014, during the last election cycle, Mia Love only won by 5%, even though she outraised Doug by $4 million. She only won by 5% in one of the most solidly Republican districts in the country. Why do you think that is? Maybe it's because she doesn't actually represent the interests of the people in Utah. And I think that Utahns, if they look into this, will see this. Last cycle, about 2 weeks before the election, Doug Owens and Mia Love were polling very, very closely to each other. And all of a sudden, as soon as those polls, those numbers came out, we saw Mia Love's campaign coffers overflowing with super PAC cash. Groups from out of state were dumping thousands and thousands of dollars into her campaign and into her super PACs to help keep her elected. That's not Utah. That's not how we do things here. In Utah, we work together. We work together to raise money, we work together to do service, and we work together in all these things. I think Doug Owens is a great candidate, and he represents the interests of the people of Utah far better than Neil Love, who represents her right-wing friends in Washington. Who do you want representing our district? Somebody who's taking money from out-of-state groups, somebody who's not even in Utah for a lot of the time, somebody who's charging the taxpayers for flights that she could well afford on a congressional salary? Or do you want somebody honest, like Doug Owens, who spent his life in being a defense attorney, helping the people of Utah, and working towards this goal? I think we should all take a look at who we want to vote for come November 4th, and I think that we're going to be very happy to see that I think it's Doug Owens. Thank you for watching. This has been the Yearly Show. You'll probably never see it again, and if you do, consider yourself lucky. I'm Jace Paul, and thanks for watching.